And then he says that, he'll be the first to admit that there's no class or preparation of any type that you can take to prepare yourself for the confinement of prison walls. No, the preparation is to not do things that get you sent to prison, honestly. Just hey friends, so this is my second attempt at recording this. I was just blathering away at a laptop doing nothing because I forgot to hit record on StreamYard, y'all. Goofy. Anyway, so where we left off, and by the way, everyone, please take a moment to subscribe to Conspiracy. I'll put her TikTok and YouTube in the description below. She streams this every Monday night live on TikTok for those of us who don't have Lifetime. Mondays at 8 Central. So we left off last time with Mike Stanfield along for the ride, literally, as they're heading to the San Francisco University for Gypsy to speak. Be inspiring. Gypsy's wearing some Y2K sunglasses, which honestly I actually like. They're cool whenever they're with the right style. Her putting them on makes me not want to wear them, y'all. Mike's being all fatherly. He's like, so are you ready, Gypsy? He says, I think you're a lot like me, Gypsy. Whenever I'm about to go into court, I don't like to talk too much. And Gypsy's like, yeah, if I don't talk, if it seems like I'm being distant, I'm just getting in the zone. Lifetime uses pensive music the way Fancy does dramatic pauses, y'all. It's crazy. A lot of pensive music. They get into the parking garage, and Gypsy's like, "Ooh, it's like an underground bunker." Tense music now. And Ken's actually opening the door for her. I think he's trying to redeem himself a little. There are a crap ton of people there, y'all. Kind of disappointing. These girls are like, we're here because of Gypsy Rose. We wanted to learn more about her story and not just how she's portrayed online. We got Mike Stanfield there looking like a possum eating grapes. And Gypsy's like, I feel like the better I do in life, the more criticism and the more hate I get. There's a lot stacked against me. Which, y'all, like, she has gotten so many sweetheart deals and chances over and over, and media deals that most of us could only dream of, and all this stuff. Most people who have to plead guilty to MURD or could never dream of getting the plea deal she did. Like, what exactly is stacked against her? Commentators, whatever. I'm going to be doing a video soon on the history of commentary and just how ancient commentary is as practice. So anyway, back to the show. Ken, being all Papa Berry, living again, got his hand on her back. Just says it's like a sea with a million sharks. Then she gets all, philosophical, and she's like, yes, I'm widely known, but I'm still a very shy person. I don't believe it. Don't believe it for a second. I've actually talked about this in a previous video. In Gypsy's first book and her second book, and in messages from Amber from Into the Weeds Foyas. Thank you, Amber. Where she's talking to Aaliyah. Gypsy is always very proud of being a public speaker and talks about how much she enjoys it. And would she do all these lives all the time? She's a very shy person. I don't buy it, y'all. Not even slightly. Then Gypsy does this thing where she's like, right before I got out, people are like, you're going to do big things. And I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure, y'all. We've seen the emails where she talked about how she was having trouble winning over Ryan's family and that flashing her status as a public figure of inspiration hadn't done anything for them. She was proud of that. I feel sure that the talk of her doing big things whenever she got out came from her sharing her own plans and her media deals. Lifetime played us some tense music about it. And then Gypsy says, I mean, of course, I want to do good for the world, but I feel like I'm still finding my footing. Yeah, that's a way of putting it. And Lifetime gives us more tense music about that. Okay, this is the scene where I legit thought that was Mike Stanfield for a second. I was like, what? But then I realized it was Ken. And then the lady who introduces Gypsy says that this speech has something to do with Project Rebound. One of the missions of Project Rebound is to assist in the destigmatization of people who were formerly incarcerated. Now, personally, I find that to be a really admirable goal, but there are a lot more people, in my opinion, who were formerly incarcerated, much more deserving of a chance like this to speak and try to help end their stigma than Gypsy Rose Blanchard. What do y'all think? Can you think of people? I certainly can. Leonard Peltier would be a good one. And she mentions that a lot of them are there for their very special guest. And she requests that everyone have an open mind and to listen to what Gypsy has to say without judgment or preconception of who she is. Well, unfortunately, when people listen to Gypsy Rose without judgment or a preconception of who she is, that's when she gets them. It's like serving up manipulation on a platter. She also asks people not to judge why Gypsy is on the stage. No, we're going to judge that. We are absolutely going to judge that. And we get a little shot of Gypsy, and I think that's Mike Stanfield waiting backstage. I don't think that's Ken. It gets hard to tell. It's weird. See, there's the Gypsy Rose Blanchard Anderson part. That is so strange to me. Do y'all have any idea why that was done? Like I said, I can't imagine that there was any legal reason. Like, being introduced for a lecture isn't like signing a legal document. I know her name still legally was Anderson at that time, but I don't see any reason why she couldn't have been just introduced as Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Do y'all? Does anyone know? We got Mike ushering her in, and everyone cheers. I'm sure that was a great moment for her. The guy interviewing her, his name is Jason Bell, and he tries to start out, all cool and conversational. And it's like, we're just having a conversation, getting to know you. It's a big part of what we do. And then he says that, he'll be the first to admit that there's no class or preparation of any type that you can take to prepare yourself for the confinement at prison walls. No, the preparation is to not do things that get you sent to prison, honestly. Just no, he is completely bought into Gypsy's narrative because he says, I feel like you were almost a prisoner before. Now, I would agree in some ways not, though, obviously. We've talked about that before. We all know that I do think that there were elements of ABUSE and how Dee Dee raised Gypsy. I just don't believe Gypsy's full story about just how ABUSIVE Didi was. And he asked her how the transition affected her to prisoner. Ken's watching her in the crowd with rapt attention. Then Gypsy says that for her, before she became incarcerated, she didn't have the simple freedoms of life before that. And then Gypsy says, for most people, whenever they get incarcerated, the biggest thing is that they miss the simple things like driving their car or whatever. And she said she didn't have that. She didn't have a form of reference for anything of a normal life to miss. Now, some feel that this is evidence of ABUSE in her home life. It could be, but I could also tell you of a lot of people who are growing up in very restrictive conservative homes right now who would consider a prison environment, as long as they weren't experiencing physical ABUSE, they would consider a prison environment more free than where they're at. Just saying, that's a reality for a lot of people. And however, because Gypsy felt that way, is why, to me, she has no business doing prison reform. What does she want reformed when she felt free in there? She even admits directly that her experience in prison was better than her life. She talks about how she was able to have the simple things, and Gypsy looks happy. I mean, look at her pictures. Looks like she got to visit a dog. And she says no matter how confined and restricted, it was better than what she knew. And the guy is like, well, that is heavy. Then he says that one of his pet peeves with law and criminal justice is the black and white idea that you know right from wrong. Not sure where he's going with that. He says, I just don't believe that, really. Okay, he says he doesn't believe that really, as the system stands today, that there's much room for context. And then he asks how that idea rests with her. Well, I can imagine to Gypsy, she feels that anyone who says that they were abused should get by with murder. That's the context for her. We've seen her advocacy for Amelia Byrd. It's one of the only times she actually showed emotion when doing advocacy work. And Gypsy says, unfortunately, she does think that we live in a society where everything is black and white. She says, and sometimes the justice system takes things into account, and other times it ignores that. Yeah, it took into account every defense that was made for you, sometimes in our opinions, without clearly looking into it. And it ignored every defense made for Nicholas Godejohn. So that's why you're free now, and he'll never will be. She says, I feel like there's a lot of things that could be taken into account, and I think that is something that needs to be worked on in the justice system. That is the most vapid answer I could possibly imagine. There are a lot of things that could be taken into account, like what, gestures broadly? The jokes write themselves, y'all. The jokes just write themselves. Gypsy says the justice system needs to take those shades of gray into account. How many shades, Gypsy? 50? I don't know which one of these girls it is exactly, but while live streaming it, when it showed these girls, Conspiracy said there's the girl that clowned on her. So one of them ripped Gypsy, roasted her online. He asks how it's been for her rebuilding her life while she's still on parole. She's like, it's been a great journey. And then they cut to Rod trying to teach her how to ride a bike. She says she's rebuilding her life the best way that she can with the restrictions that she has. Now, we all know she's been given so much leeway. No other parolee that most any of us have ever heard of have been given the kind of freedoms and lack of restrictions that Gypsy Rose has got. And she's like, with the restrictions I have, I can't just go anywhere anytime I want. She explained to them that even to come to this event right now, she had to get permission from her parole officer. Freaking duh, Gypsy. And she talks about how part of her life that's missing is the fact that she never got to sow her wild oats. Well, you're doing it now. And she said maybe she would get that part of life after parole, or maybe not. She doesn't know. When she comes off parole, like, she still is a baby, so it's kinda hard. Everybody knows, like, it's kinda hard to sow your wild oats and act crazy when you've got a baby. There's a level of responsibility that comes along with taking good care of a newborn, an infant, and even a toddler that doesn't jive with sowing your wild oats, just doesn't. Not saying people don't need breaks, they absolutely do, but having a break, a date night now and then, and sowing your wild oats, two very, very vastly different things. It's not usually the kind of thing you do in a committed relationship either. Then she says that navigating parole is the thing that is keeping her free, making sure she's doing everything she can to check off all the boxes and rules. Again, duh. Like, I feel like she tries to use the biggest word possible, navigate, to make the most basic statement. I am doing everything I can to not violate parole. It's so basic. Like, good lord, Mike looks ominous and intense back here, like jump scare, creepy. What on earth? And then they have him start talking about, when Gypsy walked in, first time he saw her. So this is really freaking interesting. Okay, let's break this part down. He said she was having a hard time breathing just from the exertion of the walk from her cell down there because of the physical situation with her being in the wheelchair so often and the medications. And that, to fast forward 9 years and see the growth, he was unbelievably impressed. Okay, here's the part that confuses me. Why was she weak from walking to the cell to his office when Nick Godejohn's stepdad testified she had no problem walking at all? She was running up and down the stairs. We know from her medical records that they said Gypsy never lost muscle mass. There was no signs of muscle atrophy like one would have if they actually stayed in a wheelchair a lot. Was she faking it? Was she faking it for Mike's sympathy, y'all? Or was she hiding the fact that she was really kind of sick from the Godejohns? It could be either. It's hard to tell. Like, she lies so much. That just really struck out to me as very weird. What do y'all think? The guy interviewing Gypsy is handling her with such kid gloves. He refuses to say MURDER. And so he asked her, he said, do you feel like, the one thing you did that brought on this conviction is kind of overshadowing the good you plan to do? Dude, she did murder, matricide. And Gypsy goes all stern and she's like, I don't like the fact that society puts labels on individuals and that defines their character. When you plead guilty to second-degree murder, that's a label that society finds very important to the rest of society's personal safety, to know about your character, that you were capable of murder. Then Gypsy says that the one thing that is so true in her life is that she knows she doesn't want to be defined by her crime. We know you don't want to, Gypsy, but too bad. It doesn't matter. You don't get that choice. You pled guilty to second-degree murder. You're always going to be defined by that. She also says she don't want to be labeled a victim, but her actions very much contradict that. She said, I want to be known as just Gypsy because that's who I am. Well, the thing is, if you didn't have a lifetime crew following you around and you didn't have a guilty plea to second-degree murder, then you probably could be known as just Gypsy. She says she feels like if society could open their minds a little bit more and have a little bit more kindness, she could get by with maybe another murder. She said, I have a choice now to make myself into whoever I want to be to a certain extent, but you don't get to shed your conviction. It's not a snakeskin. She said that should go for everybody. What about Becca Scoops? Does it go for Becca Scoops, Gypsy? Because you shared what Bree did. Does Becca Scoops get to make herself into whatever she wants to be right now? Because everything I saw shared from her was several years old. Says you're not defined by your past. Really, Gypsy? Again, what about Becca Scoops? And then, of course, Gypsy always has to address the haters. And the interviewer speaks for her. It's just Gypsy, damn it. Just Gypsy, the mother of matricide murderer. Then Gypsy's all, "It's just me." Look at her, she wants to break into song. I believe. Okay, friends, I am going to pause to edit here, and we will continue with the recap tomorrow. Have a good day, y'all.